Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. I am your hostess, Alyssa, or you may also refer to me for the purposes of this discussion as Galadriel. We are here to talk about Lord of the Rings of Power Season 2. Um, Joining me, our special guest, I have someone who's traveled here all the way from Numenor. That will be the Lord of the Cats himself, Marc from Enchantment of Eternity. Hello, Marc.
Hello, I am not the Lord of Gifts, I'm the Lord of Cats. And here, I'll prove it. Here's a cat. Just grabbed him and vomited. Yeah, there he goes. All right, come on, I'm your Lord. Anyway, so yes, great to see you. Great to be here to talk about Galadriel and Numenor and all sorts of places.
Also here with us is someone who does not overpronounce his name in some bad Gaelic accent or whatever that's supposed to be. Darrin from D's Reviews. Hello, Darrin.
Yeah, so really excited to be here and jump into this. Yeah, I just try to do what 2 and 1 syllables. Try to keep it really simple. You don't have to like roll anything off the back of your tongue in order to try and pronounce my name. So trying to keep it simple.
All right, and welcome Brandon in the chat. Brandon is here. Hello. Okay, let us get into the discussion. We will start with our overall thoughts. We'll each give our overall thoughts. I'm going to go last, so I want to hear from you guys first. I actually already know what Marc's overall thoughts were because I watched his review. So I want to start with Darrin. Darrin, did you think this was an improvement over season 1? Did you like it? Let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I do have to say that it's an improvement over season 1. Yeah, they always have a lot to establish, and I think a lot of that early voiceover background. I mean, I felt like the first half of episode 1 was just like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened before we even got to anything. So I think it was nice that they were able to kind of like just pick up the story and run with it. And the one thing that I do really appreciate about this show is you see the budget all up on the screen for you. All of the money that's spent, they do an amazing job. They do some incredible camera work and views. It's the composition of characters and stuff that they have to deal with. It's a beautiful all into these roles. The problem that I have with it really, and it hurts me to say this, is just I don't really care about anybody. I'm not hooked into anyone's real storyline. Darrin probably is the one that I enjoy the most when he's up on screen. But everything else, they lean a bit into the over drama, which again, that's part of what Tolkien does. But it was one of those where I was like, okay, I just want to get back in. And I was, seeing, the episode ends this week and what's coming up next. But I wasn't like really looking forward to it. It was like, oh, that's right. It's Thursday. I think the Rings of Power's on. I got some time. I should check it now. Maybe I'll watch it in the morning when it comes, when I've got a little bit more time. I just couldn't really get grabbed by the show. And again, it's not a lack of performance and not a lack of production. I think probably there's so many things going on. I tend to get lost. And I think there's probably a couple of storylines they could have even not have at all. So they could focus on the few of the bigger ones and maybe do a more focused storytelling on that. So it was good. I enjoyed it. I just found myself having to force myself to care about what was going on, and I didn't really understand why that was happening.
Well, I will say before I go to Mark that I think both Mark and I would agree that they could have cut or reduced or cut out entirely certain storylines. And I think Mark and I are in agreement which storylines could have went, and we will talk about them. We're going to go through each of the storylines after
Okay.
we all get our overall thoughts, and I'll tell you which ones I think should have been condensed or cut entirely. Or, but that I definitely agree with. But Mark, let's hear your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts, and it's a question really, is are we just going to stand around and not give any speeches? No! Today we make our stand! Sorry, I got to do all the pitch meeting references.
Did they do that as much in season 2, though? I feel like I don't remember seeing as many speeches in season 2.
No, I don't think so. I think they did turn it down. Maybe they watched the pitch meeting.
That was from the pitch meeting in season 1.
Yeah. I'm sure there was at least one, though. I'm sure there was. But
I mean,
anyway,
we had the voiceover that was pretty much the same thing as what Sam did in the Lord of the
I count that as a speech.
Yeah.
3 times. 3 times. Sorry, we'll get to that.
Well, yeah, Lord. The show is trying to be like the movies a bit too much. I agree. They did the multiple endings in the finale, and of course, you just mentioned the speech, which is like just like Sam's speech from Two Towers. But I would say, to kind of what Darrin said, I did care about several people in the show. A couple characters I really cared about. None of them are in Numenor. I don't give a shit about any of those characters there, and I wish they would just get that storyline over with. But yeah, some other characters, sure, I care about. But yeah, so as I said in my review, overall, I liked it better in season 1. I still don't think it was like absolutely amazing or anything like that, but it's definitely improvement, definitely hitching in the right direction. I'm sure we're about to get to Alyssa's favorite storyline, which I'm sure is mine as well. And I think that was by far like better than anything in season 1. In fact, my favorite thing about season 1 was the finale with the big reveal, and I think they took that and ran with it, and that was definitely the biggest sort of draw for me. And some of the other storylines I thought were okay. And some of them, I did like Galadriel. Sorry, I did like Galadriel and Elrond in this season as well. Really impressed with them. So yeah, it was kind of some episodes were better than others, depending on which storylines they focused on. Sometimes they were too obviously trying to be like the movies. Look, that's from the other movie. But overall, oh God, I'm just pitch meeting it up the whole time. But anyway, yeah, overall, I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was a definite improvement over season 1 as well. First and foremost, that it's a show called Rings of Power, and we saw some goddamn Rings of Power this season, because I heard that was my big complaint. One of my big complaints last season is like the show is called The Rings of Power, and we get Rings of Power the last 5 minutes of the entire season. Like, it just seemed like a lot of the stuff in season 1 was just like, what is even the point of any of this? So I think they did. I mean, there were still a lot of things that just seemed pointless, that didn't belong. As I mentioned before, storylines that I think could have been cut. I'll give you a little hint. One is LOTR. Like, I think they can. We'll get to it. I'm going to go in order from my favorite to least favorite storyline. So that'll be more toward the end of the video, where we'll do more of a bitch fest. But yeah, I think there's some of the issues from season 1 still exist, but I do think that they got a little better at storytelling. I still feel like the show is spread a little too thin. They're trying to do too many things, too many characters, too many storylines. They're maybe trying to be a little bit too much like Game of Thrones in that way. And I think I'm hoping things get condensed a little bit more in season 3. I would like to see that. But that said, there were a lot of things that I thought they did a lot better. I'm with Mark. I did care about a lot of these characters. Some from that aforementioned storyline as an example, I don't give a shit about any of those characters. But there are, which is why I think it would be good to condense it, combine, and get more straightforward storytelling in the future. But the storylines with the characters that I did like, I really loved. And I also loved that we didn't get caught up on this like mystery thing. I mean, I guess Gandalf supposedly was still a mystery, even though everybody knew, but it wasn't like the whole thing, like, who is Sauron? I felt that should have been revealed earlier in season one. Maybe not right at the beginning, but a little bit earlier to add more depth to like his history with I should have asked you guys what this character's name was before we came on, so I don't embarrass myself. Is it Adar? Is that the name of the?
Yes, Adar.
Okay, Adar. Yeah, his history with Adar, because there was a scene that they had last season where it was like, "Oh, do you remember me?" He's like, "No," and kind of Adar mentioning that he killed Sauron, and I was confused by all that. So I kind of wish we had gotten that like flashback that we got at the beginning of this season, last season. It would have added more to some of the storylines last season. But I'm glad that we started there. I thought that was a good place to start. And I liked how it kind of comes full circle, and I like the ending as well. Although I will say I think season one had a stronger ending. Season one's ending was my favorite part of that season. Season two, I feel like it started off strong and dragged in the middle. It had some issues in the middle, and then the ending, it bounces back, but not quite to the level of where it started off as. Yeah, all of that to say, I did like it better in season one, but it still has issues, and I still hope that it can maybe improve in season three.
Yes, you're right. The one thing you're right, we got to see more rings. Not a whole lot of understanding. Like, and what exactly do the rings do? I mean, I know we get with some of the Darrins and they make you crave, but that was one thing. It's like, and they have the rings of power, which nebulously make you tougher. Which was a nice thing actually that they did have, I think, with the Dwarven rings. I think they were able to play with those ideas a little bit more. And the connection in with the stones, with the elves. I guess it was really they had a higher connection with life around them, and that was ended up being what that little particular is. Because I know each ring has its own kind of power and direction.
Yeah, and I just want to comment on something Brandon said in the chat. Adar, yes, a made-up character. Technically, Brandon, they're all made-up characters, but I know what you mean. You're saying he's not in the Tolkien lore. But, all right.
One other thing I want to point out that Brandon said in the chat was that apparently one of Sauron's earlier aliases was the Prince of Cats. Well, shit, I want to see that character. Make up for all the cats we didn't get in House of the Dragon that we should have got.
I know. I'm still. All right. Do you guys have anything else before we can move into the storylines? Okay, so if you watched Marc's review, then you saw that Marc went from the least favorite storyline to his favorite storyline. I'm going the opposite way. I'm going with my personal favorite storyline, and we're going to end with the bitching at the end with my least favorite Númenor. Excuse me. And there's some slight differences between Marc's and I's rankings, although we're pretty close in that. So I'll start with my favorite, which I think is Marc's favorite too, according to your review. Sounds like it maybe isn't Darrin's favorite, but it is the storyline with Sauron and Celebrimbor. I love what they're doing with Sauron, because Sauron, in the Lord of the Rings books that I read, and because I never read the Silmarillion. And in the film, the films especially, like Sauron is just this disembodied character. The films made him a little bit more of a character by having that big eye that actually isn't in the books, but it's still just like, this like ominous presence, which worked for those books and the films. But I love seeing him as a character and seeing him being the Lord of Deception and seeing how he manipulates people. I just really loved watching that play out and really loved um, uh, the whole interactions with Celebrimbor. I have more to say, but let me get to you guys. Let's start with Marc. We'll start with you on this one.
Yes, I think the actor who plays Sauron is really great, and I think the writing for him was really good. What I love about him is the way you totally see him toying with everyone, like the way he manipulates Celebrimbor throughout the season is absolutely amazing. And all the little games he plays with him, and he makes it. He's like, "Oh no, we're under attack. I should do something." He's like, "What are you talking about? It's a beautiful day," and he's just making him see shit, and just like he's like getting able to get all the elves against him. And this, not that I care too much about the lore, but this is in keeping with the lore that Sauron is very good at deceiving people, called the Deceiver, and he can take different forms. In fact, they actually stayed, like the whole thing with Halbrand in season 1 was completely made up, for not in the books for the show. But this, the stuff that he's doing this season with becoming the elf, Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, that's directly from the lore. So it's interesting the things that they choose and not choose. I don't give a shit that they're changing all the stuff up from the lore, and I don't care that they're doing everything out of order, and I don't care that they're combining 1,000 years into one time period. But I don't care that they're changing. That's fine. It's just show. You do what you need to do to tell a good story. But I do like it when they do those call outs from the lore and do take certain things from it. And this is one of them. And I think there's a reason why. That's good writing. They're choosing what works. And this really worked, getting Sauron sort of manipulating all the elves around them, and sort of Galadriel was right that he wanted Adar and the orcs attack, and he used it against him. So showing him like as an amazing villain, because he's a mastermind. He's playing 3D chess. He's ahead of everyone, and even the Galadriel and Elrond storyline, they made it clear that he can manipulate people, like the whole season for Galadriel, which I know we'll get to her later, but it was about how guilty she was feeling and how inferior she was feeling for being deceived by Sauron. So it just goes to what a great villain. Honestly, I think that he's a much more interesting villain than the movies, because the movie just having a giant eye that's abstract, and everyone always talks about him, but he's just an eye going Grr. So it's actually good to see this great villain character, and it's in keeping with the lore, and I think they did an amazing job with it.
Darrin, what are your thoughts?
I have to pretty much agree in entirety. This was, probably one of the most interesting of the storylines they had. And I, just as someone who has read Lord of the Rings multiple times when I was younger, because I was trying to be all intellectual and stuff, certainly attempted the Silmarillion at least twice. Was never able to push far through it, because it is a weighty, just slog of a read. For the most part. But I had always really thought, like, how did Sauron actually get in, and how did he deceive, and how did he place these powers in the rings? So seeing how this was all done, how much of a deceiver is, how he gets in and preys on everyone, wants and expectations and pride even, to get them to do what he wants. Was excellent in the fact that he's involved and can add whatever little spells of his own into the rings as they're being made, but they have to be done right by such a craftsman. I mean, it gave a real depth and I think just diabolicalness behind Sauron, because yes, he does have all of these plans. He's planned everybody's reaction and counter reaction to that, and 3 layers in how they're going to respond to everything. And he's able to weave illusions and make you see the world the way that he wants you to see it. And so it really added to me a lot of heft and weight to the storyline and what the danger of these rings are. So when we do start to see their really strong effect, especially with the dwarves, you're like, okay, this is how he does it. This is how he twists. This is how he takes the power. And so it was, I really did enjoy seeing how this was crafted. And I thought the performances were all really well. The guy who plays Sauron is amazing and can, texture those emotions so he can be appealing or soft or wounded, depending on what he needs to do to prey on whoever he's manipulating at the time. And I thought Celebrimbor was excellent as someone who was caught up so much in what he wanted to contribute to the world. You could see how he could be manipulated so easily and talked to, especially if you have, a Valar show up and say, I have been brought to you to help you craft these wings to save the world. It was beautifully done. And even to the point where he was waiting patiently out on the outskirts of town, just knowing sooner or later he'd get pulled in. Celebrimbor would have to sort of reach out for him. I just thought this was, like I said, I think one of the most interesting of the storylines that they had for this. And I got, I couldn't agree more with where you guys put it.
Yeah, Sauron just has Celebrimbor like wrapped around his finger for the entirety of the season. It's just kind of, fun. I guess it's fun to watch, even though I don't know. He's just such a master manipulator. He like pegged exactly who Celebrimbor was, exactly how to manipulate him, and manipulate all the people around him, so that when Celebrimbor does start to suspect something is up or starts to turn against Sauron a little bit, now he's manipulated everyone else into thinking, oh, he's just going crazy. You got to trust me. And it's just to watch it was just really, really interesting. I also found it interesting that at the very end, in the last episode, Celebrimbor finally is able to like kind of get a little one up on Sauron a little bit, at least verbally. And then Sauron, I think, is at his weakest when he is just a straightforward villain and he's just like, tell me where the rings are. Whereas he's much stronger when he's able to be that deceiver and manipulate people. So I found that really interesting. I do have to point out one little thing that bugged me. You're the Lord of the Rings. Like, he said the thing. He said the thing. Like, come on.
But also, it's like, that doesn't feel like an insult. Yes, I am. I am the Lord of the Rings. It's like you're trying to make a dig, but it's not really working out.
I like the sound of that. I think I'm going to name some films and books after that.
I should get that engraved somewhere. Some card, Sauron, Lord of the Rings. Yes, it's got a good sound. Yeah, exactly.
There were things like that throughout the season that were a little heavy-handed, but yeah.
And actually, speaking of sound, that was the one thing that I was kind of wishing that they will include, and maybe they will in a future season, and this will satisfy this, is I would like to hear more about Morgoth and the earlier battles and what his relationship and how that came in. And that does seem like an appropriate flashback for opening a season.
You gotta read the Silmarillion in order to find that out.
I don't want to read, man. That's not what I pay my subscription price for. Put it in my eyeballs. But that is one thing that I found myself, as the couple of times it was mentioned, was like, I'd like to know more about that. So again, just a little aside, not really a criticism, maybe just a request.
All right. Mark, do you have anything else to add on this storyline?
Oh, I think I had a complaint, but I can't remember it at the time. So, the Lord of the Rings thing didn't mind me that. Didn't bother me that much. It was kind of like, yeah, it's kind of that.
I
I
wouldn't say
could,
it bothered me a lot. It's just like,
yeah,
it's a little heavy.
it is definitely, yeah. But I could have sworn they also said that in season 1, but maybe I'm mistaken.
I don't remember it, but
Yeah.
I could be like, yeah, I can remember.
If they end every season with someone managing to put in Lord of the Rings at some point, he got us the Lord of the Rings. You know, I would give them points. I'd take sins back if they
Yeah.
did that.
Well, it wasn't. I would say that it probably wasn't as heavy-handed as last season when they were like the Southlands, Mordor.
Yes, that was worse by far. Yeah,
Really?
but,
I never would have guessed.
You have some
But-
orc just kicks the welcome to Southland sign over.
Well,
But you know what the Lord of the Rings thing reminded me of? It reminded me of, so you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
yeah. All right. Well, Darren, it looks like if you want to know more about Morgoth, just get a hold of Brandon. I think Brandon. It looks like Brandon could tell you all about Morgoth.
But Brandon, can you tell me with $1 billion budget right in front of me? See, that's what my $9.99 a month demands. Or whatever Prime is. I don't know.
I think it's more than that now.
The
But
pay by
anyway,
the year, so yeah.
Morgoth. Anyway, sorry.
all right. Let us move on. For me was my second favorite storyline. This is where Mark and I differ a little bit, but it sounds like maybe a little bit in agreement with Darren because you mentioned it in your beginning. Uh, I like the Doran storyline, the storyline with the dwarves. I think that was a really strong character storyline. The whole thing with the ring. Obviously, we have seen this not only in the Lord of the Rings films, but the basic concept of someone being manipulated by some outside object and becoming more evil. Blah blah blah. We've seen that a million times, but I love the execution here, and it has a lot to do with the characters that they were believable and their feelings for each other, their relationships were believable. That Durin's complex feelings about his father, you could really feel it. And for me, the unsung hero of this show is Disa. I thought she added a lot. I think she really uplifted the storyline. She was kind of the voice of reason. And I love her delivery. She at the beginning of the season when the two Durins were still not talking, he's like, just go talk to your fucking father. I mean, basically, just and she was always the one who kind of like knew what was happening, and like when Doran, the younger, was maybe a little bit like, well, I don't know. Like she always was the one who knew what was up and was able to push things in the right direction. So I love this character. I am completely blocking out all of the right-wing talk that I'm sure is happening out there about how woke it is to have a person of color.
That's been going on since season 1.
Yeah. I'm sure. I'm just blocking it out. The idea that the Lord of the Rings has become woke is more laughable than the idea that Star Trek has just become woke. Do you know what the original concept of? Do you know what the whole thing is about? So yeah, I'm blocking all of that out. I'm just like loving this character on screen, the character of Disa, and so. I mean, it was very well telegraphed where they were going with the Balrog. One of the things that they had was like, hey, that's from the movie where they had the doorway with they put the password. It's the Elven word for elf and all that. And, I mean, we know where it's heading, and yet I was riveted by the storyline because of the characters. I do have one complaint about this storyline, but I want to hear from you guys first, and then I'll circle back around to my one complaint. Darrin, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I love the actor who's playing Darrin. He's just very lovable. I mean, he and Disa both, I kind of both just want to give him big hugs. The fact that he can play the levels of, you know, anger, sadness, confusion, hurt, retribution. I mean, how he plays throughout the whole season, how he's dealing with his father, his relationship with his father, and how the rings change it. And then how ultimately he's got to stand up and battle against. I really enjoyed that. Like Brandon, I loved seeing Moria in all its glory with the way that the lights roll down. The fact how the explosion of the volcano sets off the earthquakes that collapses the light tunnels again. It's like this multi-layered Sauron plan. Like, this is how I'm going to get my literal fingers into there, and have them have a need that we can thus exploit and get in further. I really enjoyed. My biggest critique really kind of, I don't know if the whole show, because yes, they do change a lot of time frames, and I both do and don't care about that. I mean, the whole Gandalf thing, yes, that happens in the third age. This is supposed to be the second age. So the wizards aren't even supposed to be around then. But it's like, well, we got to put Gandalf in. It's Lord of the Rings. That's what people are going to want to see. I get the marketing idea for it. Whether I agree with it or not, I'll save that till we get to that storyline. The Balrog kind of does bother me. Only in the sense that it's the obvious, hey, it's that big scary monster from the movie. Again, another big reference pull. But even in the film, Gandalf is like, he's obviously been to Moria. He's seen it in all of its glory before. And it was afterwards that they delved too deep, they got too greedy, and they released this beast. You know, now it's like, well, they did it before, then they forgot all about the beast, then they did it again later on. It's like, to me, that's reaching too far to grab for the movie audience. I think that they could have found something else that was just related to this. If you want to bring a Balrog, find a different way of doing it. But that's the only thing that I was like, man, that's cool, but that really confuses things from the film. And why would you do that? You know, it's like, isn't there another conflict that you can pull out of all of this? Because really, that's only a bare bookmark on the season and how they sort of wrap up the storyline. But all the other real interesting drama and character and power play had nothing to do with that. So I felt like it wasn't a necessary thing to pull in the end, outside of just having a really cool looking cold opening in your final episode.
Yeah, I thought the storyline was okay. So I guess I do disagree with this one. I actually wasn't that impressed with Disa. Not that I didn't like her. I thought she was fine. But I don't know. The scenes with her, like, trying to force Darrin to talk to her father, was kind of like, yeah, I wasn't really that into it. And I did think that the storyline definitely dragged in the middle. There was one episode where I was just like, let's get back to Elrond and Galadriel and Sauron. But it was fine. Like, I didn't not like it. I think there was definitely, I mean, the Gold Fever storyline that they did was very stereotypical, but it was necessary because you're having Rings of Power. You obviously got to do this, so it fit and made sense. I don't begrudge them from doing it, but that being said, I wasn't that fascinated by it. Although I did think the ending where they had the confrontation with Darrin and his father finally sacrificed himself. That was touching. I like that. So there was definitely things about the storyline I did like. Now, I have complaints about the Balrog too, but they're different. So I kind of thought First of all, I will say it would have been better if they never foreshadowed it. At the end of season 1, they did like this one scene where they went, "Oh, it's the Balrog!" And then earlier in the season, like when Sauron was there with the dwarves, he saw a vision of the Balrog, and I'm like, "All right, you're just buttering this up. You're just foreshadowing, like, oh, the Balrog is coming." I thought it actually might have been better if they just surprised us with the Balrog, and they had those like when Deeza could hear the growlings underground. Like that's all you need. So you can infer, you can imply the Balrog's there, but you don't actually need to fucking show it. I think that would have been a much better reveal. And also, yeah, I did find that it was beautifully shot when Doran, like the father, went up and tried to, flew up, and that was a beautiful cinematography. But it did come off as kind of cheesy, that whole scene of like, oh, it's from the movie. But I didn't begrudge it that much because, as I said, I liked what they did with Doran losing his father and sacrificing himself. What I wasn't a big fan of, I liked the storyline good enough, just to be clear. I didn't think it was bad. But what I'm more worried about is the storyline in season 3 because I got no interest in his brother that we never met trying to take the throne from him. Like, do we really need, like, can't we just get to the main story? Do we need this other distraction? Like, having the problems with the other dwarves wanting the rings, okay, I get that, and I'll be in for that. But we don't need this isn't fucking House of Dragons. We don't need to fight over the throne. I don't know. So I'm not looking forward to that. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I thought it was all right.
Yeah, but Mark, if they were going to surprise us with the Balrog, they couldn't have the big scene with the Moria gate there, because if they have that, we're like, oh, the Balrog, because.
Well, I don't know, because I don't think the gate gives it away, because we know they're in Moria from season 1. So.
Yeah, but I know, but like having the gate, like in the movie, they go in the gate and then kind of. I know that I personally was like Balrog. Like we see that gate, it's Balrog.
I didn't make that connection at all, but that was just
because that's what it is in the movies. Like they go through the gate and they encounter the Balrog after they go through the gate. So like,
but they're in Moria and they're already in Moria. So
yeah, I know, but I have associations. Maybe my brain works differently than yours. But I have associations, very strong associations between that gate and the Balrog. So for me, like, there's no way they would have been able to hide the Balrog if they had that gate. But I don't totally disagree with you. But I didn't. Go ahead. I didn't have huge problems with the Balrog. I haven't talked about what my hang up with this storyline, and it actually kind of crosses over into other storylines too, is that for me, the dwarves' involvement in the battle at the end did not fit. And I do understand that the dwarves were in the battle in the original lore, but they've changed a lot of things from the original lore. That seemed like a thing they should have changed, because to me it felt out of place that all of a sudden out of nowhere Elrond just shows up and is asking Darrin to go help him. And I wanted Darrin to say, hey, dude, I'm in my own storyline right now. You're kind of distracting me. This is like what I'm doing now has nothing to do with what you're doing. And I did buy that Darrin would go along with it. I did not buy that any of the other dwarves would. When he was giving this big, oh, there is a speech. Here's a speech. Talking about speeches. He gives this big rousing speech, and we're going to fight. Are you with me? I expected all the dwarves to go, fuck no, we've got our own problems. I don't give a shit about those elves. So when they were all like, yeah, I was surprised by that. It didn't feel natural. Didn't feel like that's how they would react. I didn't understand why any of the other dwarves would give a shit about Elrond or any of that other stuff. And then at the end of that penultimate episode, what's his name? The king's right-hand man dude comes in and he's like, if you leave now, there might not be a home to come back to. So you got to stay. And I was like, well, no shit. We already knew that. So that's why he shouldn't even been in the storyline to begin with. Like, it made no sense. And then for the other dwarves to just all of a sudden show up like a Deus Ex Machina in the finale, that it just felt like cramming a square peg into a round hole. well, they were there in the lore, so we got to cram this in, and it just didn't feel right to me. Didn't feel natural. Didn't fit. And I actually went. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention. My first viewing, I actually thought that dwarf that Elrond mistakes for Durin was Durin. And I was like, wait, what? When did your little finger teleport him? But then on the second viewing, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was a different guy who kind of looked like Durin. It was like the princess in mourning. He also spoke in this like thick accent that I didn't understand the first time I watched it. And he's like, the princess in mourning. And I'm like, oh, okay. Not as bad as I thought, because I thought that was Durin. I'm like, what hell is he there? But once I realized it wasn't Durin, it still makes no sense to me. It still doesn't fit. I feel like they should have kept that as a completely separate storyline. I know that they established this friendship between Durin and Elrond in season 1, and you want to kind of get back to that, but this just didn't work for me. So that was my biggest complaint about the storyline, which also kind of ties into the other storylines as well.
Yeah, I gotta say the elven dwarven teletransport system that allows you to arrive just in the nick of the plot gets kind of annoying because he rounds them all up. Right, we're gonna go save the elves. Yeah, then he comes up. All right, everyone, hold on that. We're gonna watch out for us for now, okay? No. Okay. We got that sorted out. To the elves. You know. Part of me really would want to have seen those little scenes. But yeah, the just on time showing up for a lot of these, I think tends to get very annoying. And it doesn't really justify, you never know what actual distance is from any place to any other place. And that gets a little bit unreal, but you know, I get it's for the drama's sake. But that did feel very tacked on afterwards.
All right, so I'm going to be Mr. Positive Contrarian here. Well, first of all, I'll say with the showing up at the last minute, that's a Lord of the Rings tradition. It's just like, and I'm just waiting for people to fall off the cliff and survive it like they're Wile E. Coyote. That's got to happen in the show eventually too. But as far as the people showing up, I actually think they didn't show up just in time because I would have expected them to show up earlier. I think they did show up a little late. So it wasn't all that convenient to me. But other than that, I really didn't. That didn't bother me at all. The whole dwarves going to help out the elves didn't bother me at all either. I actually kind of liked it. I bought it. I think it makes sense between Doran and Elrond's friendship, and I think it worked for the story. So yeah, I didn't have a problem with this one.
Well, to be clear, I don't care about them showing up all of a sudden. That's not where my issue is. My issue is the dwarves being drawn into this storyline felt like a distraction from their own storyline. Like it just didn't fit. The pieces didn't fit together. It seemed like they were trying to force things into the lore that just did not feel natural to me. I don't understand the motivation for the other dwarves even wanting to go there, and then for it to flip back and go, oh no, we're not going. All of a sudden, we're going, but we're not going. Like, why is that even there? I should not have even been there. I think the dwarves should have just had their own storyline, had nothing to do with that. It would have been more streamlined. It would have made more sense to me. This felt very forced. That's more my issue. That I don't care about the dwarves showing up at the last minute. That was not my issue.
Yeah. Oh no, I was addressing Darrin for that one. Okay. But yeah, it worked for me. Like it didn't seem out of place for me. It worked for me, and I suppose maybe the difference between me and you is I wasn't that interested in the Doran storyline, so I was more interested in the other storyline at the battle. So I was like okay with them, interrupting that storyline to go to that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna say all I did is when Elrond is looking up, going, Doran will show. They're looking at the ridge. I was for half a second expecting Gandalf to just show up right there, just have a little twinkle of light, and then they come in. So the fact that didn't happen,
I think their entrance could have been more convenient than it was. It was still convenient though.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready to move on to the next one? So next, I want to talk about Adar. As Brandon pointed out, an invention for the show. Uh, I really like this character, and I liked this storyline. I as long as it ended the way that it did. I always knew that like this character has to go by the end of this season. They first of all, it doesn't as a character it doesn't exist in lore, and we also know where Sauron is going, and this character is going to have nothing to do with that. And they foreshadowed it nicely with that opening scene that I referenced earlier, where Adar kills Sauron. And then I love how they circle back around and he gets killed in a very similar fashion. In fact, I've seen like the shots of the two scenes back to back, and they're intentionally shot in a very similar way. I love that full circle that it comes in. And this is one of those cases like when you know where something is going, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like I think oftentimes when I know where a story is going, I want them to pay it off and do it well. And I think that they did with the storyline. I also want to point out that I did not know that this character was recast until I watched Marc's review, because I haven't watched the damn thing in 2 years. Like I didn't remember there was a different actor. So I guess that's a credit to this new actor. Maybe a discredit to the previous actor that he could be so easily replaced and I didn't even notice. I don't know. And then like I went back and watched a scene from season 1. I was like, oh yeah, it is a different guy. But like I had no idea it was a different actor until because I haven't watched the thing in 2 years. I didn't remember what he really looked like. So I mean, there's a credit to this actor. I found his storyline very interesting and engaging. I think my issue here is this ties into that battle too. That penultimate episode. I think Marc, you mentioned in your review how it was like they were trying to be like Game of Thrones penultimate episode, and we have this whole battle. I think visually it was really well done, as a lot of things on the show are. But I think I had an issue with the dwarves; they didn't fit to me. But also, I was really confused. It was just kind of clunky how Elrond and the elves are fighting against Adar and the orcs who are trying to go and attack Sauron, and they're all against Sauron. I was just like, I don't know, this is just, I don't know. It was just kind of confusing and just clunky the way that they presented it. So I actually didn't love the battle, just story wise. Visually fantastic, but I think that was kind of my issue with like it gets a little clunky in there. But I did love Adar as a character. I like when he gets the ring and then he reverts back to his elven state. And as you mentioned in your review, Marc, that I think it was you who mentioned this, that you like how they didn't say his name. That was you, right? Who said that? Was that you or is that someone else?
Nah, I think there was someone else.
Okay, someone said, maybe it wasn't you, some video I watched said that they like how they didn't give his actual name. That I swear that was you, but like that.
I don't remember saying that. Maybe I did just forget.
For whoever said it, I agree with that. Like I like that they didn't like pick out somebody from the lore and be like, that's who that. Maybe it was Jesse Gender who said this. Now that I think about it. But anyways, regardless, like I agree with that idea that I like how they didn't like have to like pick a name out of the lore and like, oh, he's that guy. Like it's just it doesn't matter. I think that it stands more strongly that way. So yeah, overall, I really like the storyline. I like that it ended. I if he hadn't died at the end, I would have been pissed. Like it had to come to that, and I liked how they did that. And then we get into season 3 and we won't have this character anymore, which I think is what needs to happen. Now we'll go to you first, Marc. What are your thoughts?
So yeah, in the chat, Brandon's saying I reckon we'll get Adar's origin story in episode 1 of season 3. I reckon that we won't. I think he's done, over with. Old news. I don't think we're going to go back to him, but that's just my humble. Maybe
I agree with you, Marc, and I would further say that if they do what Brandon suggests, I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I don't think I would either. Well, it depends on how they do it. If they make it
I think
relevant,
if they kind of tie it in somehow, but it
yeah,
feels like he's history, he's the past. Like we gotta,
yeah, I
yeah.
get that. But I hadn't seen season 1 in a couple of years either. But I remembered the actor because it was Benjamin Stark, the same actor who played Benjamin Stark, and
Oh, I guess I didn't know that. I didn't realize that.
But I actually liked the first actor better, but I warmed up to the second one eventually. I still like the tone, like they're both good actors. I just like the sort of the tone and the style, the way he played Adar a bit better. But I'm fine with it. I mean, the show's got to do what they got to do. They lose an actor. I think it would have been better than killing him off screen in between seasons, which actually does happen with a different character. But so at least they didn't do that. So I'm glad they recast him because I like what they did with him this season. And I agree the scene where he turned back into the elf and he's like, I don't want to be this. Take the ring back. Like, that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting this whole thing with him taking the ring and fighting Sauron. I got the ring. And I was like, yeah, I wasn't really looking forward to that. And like, they thought what they did was actually much better. Now, as far as the battle goes, I agree with you that it was, a bit messy on who was fighting who and why. And it seems like Adar was being a bit of a moron. Should have listened to Galadriel when she said that you were playing right into Sauron's plans. I guess it just shows how he's underestimating Sauron, I suppose. But that being said, I still liked the battle. I still thought it was good. It was more than just being visually interesting. I thought it was interesting for the characters. But if we're going to compare it to like battles in Game of Thrones penultimate episodes, it was not as good. It was definitely trying to be as good. So that's the main thing that I was like, oh, this is trying to be like Blackwater or Battle at the Wall or the Battle of Bastards, and it's nowhere near good as any of those. So it kind of felt that natural disappointment of him because like it's not living up to what they were trying to do. It was too obvious that they were trying to do that too. But still, I still liked the battle. I still thought it was good. Now, the main complaint I had in this storyline was at the start when Sauron goes to Mordor. It seemed like completely unnecessary because he ends up just going to Celebrimbor right away, and then Adar figures out that Halbrand was Sauron on the way anyway. So why did he? I am still confused on why he went there. It seemed like the reason he went there is because at the end of season 1 they showed him walking into Mordor. It's like, oh, we got to pay this off, so we had to have them going to Mordor. In season 1, and this is something that was bothering me when Adar and Halbrand met up at the start of the season. I could have sworn in season 1, Halbrand was like, don't you remember me? Don't you know who I am? Or something like that. And I was like, so why isn't he catching on that this is Sauron? I don't know. So that's what bothered me about that.
Well, I think, Mark, you answered your own question. I think the answer is because they left it at the end of season 1. And my guess would be is that they had maybe a different idea in mind. Like they had maybe a different storyline in mind before he gets to Celebrimbor, and they were like, no, let's not do that. Let's just get him to Celebrimbor. Yeah. But we left off the season with him heading to Mordor, so we got to do something. So I
think you're exactly right. I think that's exactly it. But this is what they should have done. They should have had Sauron walk into Mordor and be like, in second thought, let's not go here. 'Tis a silly place. And then walk around.
That perfect note. There's really nothing more I can add on to that. I mean, I get the idea that he was baiting Adar in, and that's pretty much why, the why that he showed up. But yeah, it was also like, and now we have to make sure that Adar lets him go so we can go to Celebrimbor and then go, hey, wait a minute, you were right here. But no, I didn't care for a while. I did appreciate Adar's role in this. as I think in a way we're seeing the kind of final fall of the Uruk, from Uruk really to orcs, because as Adar represents, the orcs were originally elves that then followed Morgoth, and then he corrupted them and they became evil and so on. And yes, I know Brandon can probably tell me the whole history here right now. But we even see earlier in the season, like, oh my God, an orc caring for a child. Oh, the right wing got so upset about that. They're supposed to be just evil. But I think this is actually an important step because it shows that fall. That's what Adar is trying to do. He's hoping that he can recover his people and lead them. Yes, they are fallen. Yes, they are what they are. But that doesn't mean that they have to continually just be evil. A whole race isn't evil. Individuals are evil, and this was written at a time where it's easier just to paint with wide brushes. So I think what we're seeing here is, of course, is Adar attempting to lead his people against Sauron, and Sauron obviously ultimately deceiving and defeating Adar and claiming the orcs as his own. I mean, in the sense, even when the orc comes up, the same one that I think betrayed Adar, it's like, oh, we shouldn't go on. It's bad out there. We should and he just kills him right there. It's like, no. Now you're orcs, and you follow whatever Sauron says, and that's it. You have no other purpose. You have no other being. You have no other self. So I did appreciate Adar's representation of kind of that final stage before that fall. On the other hand, and this may be something we reiterate when we talk about Galadriel's storyline, but there did seem to be a lot of plot contrivance in a lot of decisions that were made here in order to get the story to move and go where they wanted it to. And so, was I overall very impressed with it? No, I appreciated what was being told here, but I also felt like this is just a guy being led around and he's going to make the choices that Sauron's going to make him choice, and maybe he'll get a cool speech at a point before he dies, which he did. So, and a good death scene is always worthwhile. I appreciated Adar, but I didn't care all that much because he knew where it was going, I guess.
Well, I agree with you what you said. You made some good points about how they kind of showed the complexities of the orcs, that yes, they were once derived from elves, and that they, before Sauron gets a hold of them, that they are more than just these one-dimensional evil beings. Like the entire race is evil. That there's a little more to them than that. I really loved how they portrayed that in this storyline. I also agree with you that it did feel like things were contrived, and I feel like Adar not listening to Galadriel was an example of that. It's kind of, I don't know. It's like the story had to go that way, so he had to be stupid and not listen to her. But there were definitely some contrivances in this for sure. But overall, I still did really like it.
Yeah, so I think Darrin, bringing up how the orcs are playing dynamic, that reminds me of why I really liked the character of Adar, because he wasn't just a flat-out evil villain, that he had motivations that you could relate to. He was stupid for not listening to Galadriel, but it is interesting that they played him as kind of dynamic. It's not just flat out evil, that he cares for his children. In fact, it was him sort of blessing the orc that allowed the orc to freaking kill him and take him over. And so, it makes him, he's a good villain too. He was a really good villain, but I think, yes, he served his purposes, so it made sense to kill him off.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, do you guys have anything else to add on Adar before we move on?
No.
All right. Okay, let's move on to Elrond and Galadriel. Uh, um, Now, first, let me say why this is so lowly ranked, and it's not because I didn't love the storyline and love these characters. It's because they kind of disappear in the middle of the season. Like I feel like it felt this is probably not inaccurate, or it probably is inaccurate, but it felt to me like Galadriel was like in a cage for 2 to 3 episodes without really having a lot of lines, and it just felt like they got off to such a really strong start. I really love the elven politics with the High King and the debate over the rings. I mean, Elrond's going to wear one eventually, but still, like, it's interesting seeing his point of view and like warning them about the rings. Also interesting is seeing the differences between the elven rings and the dwarven rings, because there are differences. So I found all of that really interesting, and these of course are the core characters. These are the characters that we see in the movies. So they were the most important characters as presented in season 1. So these, I thought I really loved their storyline the first like 2-3 episodes or so, maybe even 4. I don't remember. But then they just sort of become a big nothing burger in the middle of the season, and then come back in the end and come back stronger. I don't think this storyline lived up to, I mean, I guess, my expectations for it, my hopes for it, but still it's ended pretty strongly. Love the battle between Galadriel and Sauron, but it did take me a couple moments to get into that, because I was like, oh yeah, they do have this history from season 1. I mean, it's mentioned in season 2. It's talked about, but that's the first scene that they actually have together in season 2 outside of the flashback scene at the beginning of the season. It took me just maybe like a little bit to like get into it, but then once I was into it, it was like, no, it was great. I love how Sauron was changing forms, and actually. This was pointed out in another video. I didn't notice this, but when he takes the form of Celebrimbor, he's like, "These are the seeds that you planted." That is the same line that Celebrimbor and says in Galadriel's visions. So a nice little circle back around to it. And I did like the visions they had earlier in the season. I think those were really well done. And yeah, I thought it was a great ending. We knew Galadriel wasn't going to die, but I do like that this is the moment that Elrond makes that change, makes that decision to put on the ring, where he had been kind of hesitant at the beginning of the season. So I like the storyline, really love these characters. The reason why I have this kind of a little more lowly ranked is because it just sort of fades into nothing in the middle of the season and has to make a comeback at the end. But otherwise, I did really like it. Let's see. Who do we start? Let's start with Darrin this time.
Yeah, this was one of the ones, I think, that the traveling back and forth to Celebrimbor, and the timings always seemed to like take longer or shorter depending on what the plot needed. It seemed forever in order to get everybody down there. And you're right, they did sort of disappear, I think, like in part way through the season. This is one of those, it's like, I'm really split on Galadriel, because I don't dislike her, but I haven't been grabbed by her. There's something kind of annoying, and I think it's just her dramatic presentation of self and speeches for some reason just, and I get that she is totally the action hero of the series, and I love that. I have no problem with that. Just everything seems so overly dramatic and fronted with her. I have trouble really kind of like latching on and caring about her particular storyline. Elrond, I just keep seeing Doogie Howser's face, and I'm just, the actor to me reminds me of Neil Patrick Harris, and for some reason I just keep imagining that face and him doing a thing. I'm expecting a shtick like at any moment, and that's really not fair to the actor, who I think is doing a great job with what he has. And And I know the elves are kind of the haughty ones in Middle Earth, and perhaps that explains all of that for me. But I don't know. It's this that I think that's the one that really frustrated me the most. It's like I should really care about this, but I can't. I can't take anyone seriously here. And I realize part of that is just me. And I'm not judging the writing or anything else on that. Um, I just, yeah. Again, I just can't. I don't care. She's just there to move the plot and to be awesome, and that's cool. But like an '80s action figure, I'm just here for the wham bam and the explosions, and you could put almost anybody in that role, which isn't fair, but it's just how I feel.
Well, Mark, we've had our different complaints. What do you think about this storyline? What's your thoughts?
I was gonna start out by saying I humbly disagree with Darrin. I thought Galadriel was one of the characters I did really care about. I thought she was a really fleshed out character. She had a clear storyline this season about her feeling guilt over the fact that she was deceived by Sauron and played by Sauron, and I think the storyline throughout the season did a really good job of playing it on that. Can she be a bit like overpowering action hero towards at times? Yeah, sure, but I think it works well in that role. I will say that her battle with Sauron at the end of the season wasn't good just because it was cool to have a good fight scene. It was good because of all the subtext to it, all the background, all that hell. She was angry about the fact of being deceived and that he's continuing to toy with her by pretending to be different people, at one point even pretending to be her and then pretending to be Halbrand, and how that's just like fucking with her head. But then she was still able to overcome that and sacrifice herself at the end rather than give him the ring. And yeah, I thought she had a great storyline this season. That's was my second favorite storyline this season, so I was a bit more higher on this storyline. As far as the storyline kind of disappearing midway season, I mean it bothered me, but not so much that I thought it hurt the storyline. It was more like, as I was saying, in the Doran storyline, I was kind of like, can we get back to the Galadriel Elrond stuff? Because I thought their interaction was really great, particularly at the start of the season with Elrond wanting to destroy the rings, and he takes it to that guy who becomes enchanted by the rings. I actually didn't see that coming. That was really great. And then how they had this sort of back and forth, that Galadriel was sent on the mission, but Elrond was put in command, and he was being very sort of adversarial towards her because he didn't trust the rings. Like, that created a really interesting dynamic that I think played out really well towards the end of the season, when they learned to sort of trust each other and give each other the ring, sort of back and forth kind of thing. And Elrond was actually willing to use it to save her life. I thought this was a great character story. And so I actually, other than saying, yeah, I wish that they touched on it more in the middle of the season, I didn't really have any huge complaints about it. I will say the scene where Elrond kissed Galadriel, I was thinking he better be slipping her something. Because if he's not slipping her something, that's fucking stupid. But then it turned out he did slip her something. I was like, okay, that's fine then. He slipped her something. That makes sense then.
And look, I can't disagree with anything that you say there, which I say is part of the frustrating part of, like, why don't I care? Because I do like the fact that she was definitely more haughty in season 1, and she is paying for it with her reluctance and how she got deceived by Sauron. And there's a lot to play in there. I completely agree with that. And the tension of the power of the rings between the two of them. Again, that is part of my own personal frustration. Is I can't get a grab on this character, even though, like I said, I think she's doing a great job, and I think that there's some cool stuff in the storyline. I would disagree that I thought that final fight between her and Sauron was a little overly dramatic for my particular tastes. But
No, I didn't think that was overly dramatic.
But
I think the Balrog thing was overly dramatic, but I thought that this was fine.
Oh, her whole end where she's like gonna give the ring and then takes it back and falls. I was just like, oh my god, is this 5 minutes of this going on?
I thought it was the subtext made it great for me.
Yeah,
But it reminded me of a complaint I do have actually about the storyline, which is at the very end when they go to this place, and I was like, come on, just fucking say it's Rivendell. We know it's Rivendell. And I kept expecting them to be like, and we shall call it Rivendell. But at least they didn't do it like that. And
I thought that was going to be Galadriel's place, which I can't recall.
Lothlorien.
No, it looked like Rivendell to me.
It looked like Rivendell. And he talked about it. Yes, and he talked about it being a sanctuary, which Rivendell's known for being a sanctuary. So, and also, someone in the video pointed out to me that Rivendell's known for having all the lores and history. So they made a point of showing all the lore and history being destroyed and Eregion, so that's implying that he's going to rebuild it and start from scratch there. And we shall call it Rivendell, but at least they didn't do that.
Well,
but
they could have just had on a title on the screen. And then played two woods.
Yeah, and then Ryan Burke can pop his head and go, "That's that place from the movie."
But I will say we get another speech. So there are plenty of speeches in this.
Speeches, you're right.
The Elf King, whatever his name is, like that, I thought that was like the third ending, and that was like, okay, let's move it on. We don't need another speech here. But we're just gonna sit around and not give speeches. Anyway.
No, I and Mark, I agree with a lot of what you say. I think that season 1 Galadriel, especially the beginning of the season, was the action hero. In fact, in the pitch meeting, they do kind of make fun of that, how she's just invincible, and like no matter what they do to her in battle, she's just unstoppable, and she's this action hero. So I think she's come a long way in character development. I think there's a lot more in season 2. I think there's more they could do still in season 3. But yeah, I think my issue with it disappearing in the middle is just that, like, it felt like there was a lot of momentum for that storyline that was just kind of killed. I would not pull from the Darrin storyline. I would pull from a different storyline that we're going to get.
Yes, no, I totally agree. Yes, absolutely, you're right.
But yeah, I think that there was I would agree more with Darrin in season 1. I think that there was some character development here in season 2, but I think there's still more room for growth, and I look forward to seeing that in season 2.
And to be fair, she is a bit of an unbeatable action hero still in this season. But I think the character beats to me like nullified that. Cancel that out.
Well, she did lose to Sauron, so she can be defeated.
And she lost to Adar.
Yeah.
But she was surrounded by like hundreds of orcs, though. So
yeah. These early season when Galadriel would have kicked all those orcs' asses. It's just
yeah, it's true. There has been improvement.
All right. Darrin, anything else to add before we move on?
No. Just I want to like it as much as you guys do. I really do. I want to be grabbed more. It just didn't.
Okay, so let us move on now to the storyline with Gandalf and Tom Bombadil and the Harfoots.
Are you sure it's Gandalf? Because I'm still not sure if it's actually
Okay, so this is a little ridiculous because I thought it was revealed at the end of season 1 when he quotes Gandalf. But then everyone's still in season 2, we don't know. Well, maybe it's not Gandalf. What if it's not Gandalf? And I'm like, shut up, it's Gandalf. Like, and then I heard at least 2 separate reviewers give the opinion of, I was hoping maybe it would be Saruman, even though I knew it was Gandalf. I thought it would be cool if it was Saruman, and I completely disagree with that point of view. I would be enraged if it was Saruman, because if they have this wizard who quotes Gandalf, who hangs out with hobbits, and they go, "Tricked you, that's actually Saruman," I would have been like, I would rage quit the show. Like, so there was a couple of reviewers who actually said they were hoping that that would be the case. I'm the complete opposite. I would have been really pissed off if it was anybody but Gandalf, because they telegraphed it so hard that it was Gandalf that, of course, it's Gandalf. I'm more annoyed with the fact that they waited till the end of season 2 to actually say his death.
Yes. Well, all right. So the one thing I just want to add real quick is being obviously Gandalf is tight.
Yeah, and going back to watch the pitch meeting, like they seem to like infer in the pitch meeting that, or it's one guy, it's Ryan George, that it was revealed that it was Gandalf, because that was the feeling that I think most of us had. But even at the end of season 1, I'd still heard some people go, "Well, maybe it's not." I was like, "Oh, shut up. Just shut up. It's so obviously Gandalf." So that bothered me. But I'm not worried about him appearing in the second age when he was supposed to be in the third age, because it's Lord of the Rings, you gotta have Gandalf in it. I think that they're gonna have to find a way to explain how he's not involved in anything. Like somehow these wizards are gonna have to be swept away somewhere. Like as long as they do that, as long as they give like a good logical reason that doesn't feel forced as to why Gandalf isn't around with the battle, basically the prologue of the Lord of the Rings movies, like that, like why Gandalf isn't there. I'm fine with it. I don't mind that they're introducing him here in the second age. That's not an issue for me. In fact, I like it. I like this character. I like the showing his establishment with the Harfoots. I like the inclusion of Tom Bombadil. I think you were the one who said this, Mark, that you didn't think that Tom Bombadil belonged in the films, that he would have been extraneous. I agree with that.
Yes, I did say that.
I think he's a great character for the books, but I never thought he would have really fit in the films, and the films had so much to do already. But I like that they brought him in here, and I do like him. They did do the whole Empire Strikes Back thing, but it turned out that was just an actual a test that Gandalf was meant to choose his friends, and I did really like that a lot. But this is another storyline to me that I was really getting into in the beginning of the season, and then just sort of drops off a cliff. And then it comes back at the end, and it was a little clunky at the end too. Like it just, I don't know, it just felt like all of a sudden Gandalf is there and the Dark Wizard is there, and then they hadn't really been hardly in it in the last 3 episodes, so it's just like I've forgotten about these guys now, and I don't know. It was I wish they had. Again, there's so many other things we're going to cut out to spend more time with Galadriel, to spend more time with this, to flesh out this storyline a little bit, maybe put a little bit more meat on the bones in this storyline. Also, I also want to discuss the identity of the Dark Wizard, but first I'll throw it back to you guys. Mark, you already started talking a little bit on it, but you want to give some more thoughts?
Yeah. So. What you said something I wanted to respond to, but I can't remember what it was. Oh well. There was so the one thing I wanted to mention is at the end of the scene where Gandalf confronts the Dark Wizard. The scene had the filming or cinematography had Battle of Winterfell syndrome, where I couldn't see a goddamn thing. It was like so dark. I'm like, wait, what's going on? Is there Halfords flying? I don't know. You need to get some more goddamn lights on there. Maybe my TV just sucks.
I didn't have that problem. I can see it.
You did it?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I can see it again.
I don't know. I watched it on 2 different TVs, and I had the problem both times. So I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's because I didn't adjust my TV. First of all, I got to make sure it matches what the DP has in there. anyway. So yes, that annoyed me. But yeah, no, otherwise I pretty much agree with you on everything you said about it. I thought Tom Bombadil, I liked him. I liked his inclusion. I liked him in the first episode that he appeared in, but then I thought they dragged that out a little bit. I'm like, oh, he's still messing around with that. It's funny because the start of the season was kind of like reminded me a lot, like Poppy's her name, right? That's her name. Yeah, Poppy and Nori. Or
which is which? Poppy I thought was the friend.
Yeah,
Isn't
Poppy's
Nori-
the friend.
Yeah,
And Nori, yeah.
Nori's the main, like, yeah,
The main one. Yeah. So so Poppy and Nori
Nori is
obviously,
Frodo, Poppy is Sam. Sorry, go on.
yes, that's what I was about to say. They're very obviously Frodo and Sam. And the starting sequence reminded me of a less adversarial version of Frodo, Sam, and Gollum wandering around. It just I don't know. It just struck me very much like that. And then when Gandalf gets Tom Bombadil, it reminded, like, even before they got into the choice at the end, it reminded me of Empire Strikes Back, of him hanging around a hut and then being like, "Oh, you gotta learn," or trying to teach him or whatever. It seemed like they were trying too much to be like that. I did like the reveal of that it was a lesson, because when I said that, it was like, oh, you have to stay here and find your staff, because if you help your friends, all will be lost. I'm like, you're just fucking doing Yoda for the Empire Strikes Back. Like, that irritated me. But then when it was revealed that, no, I was actually a test, you were supposed to help your friends, my first thought was, ha, take that, Yoda, you idiot. Anyway, but I did like that they made it different, and I actually think that makes more sense, that the good thing to do is to help your friends, and that actually fit nicely in the themes of the storyline. I was a bit unclear on whether or not they're saying that Gandalf and Nori were separating. It sounded like they were saying their goodbyes there.
That's the impression I got.
Yeah. So I guess that's fine if that's what they're setting up for. But you notice how it was either, I think it was Poppy who said, or maybe it was Nori. One of them said, "Don't be a stranger."
It was Poppy who said,
it was Poppy. Get it, because they were calling him the Stranger, and it was just before they revealed he was Gandalf. So don't be a stranger, because now you're Gandalf. But I like the Harfoots were kind of cool. I didn't care that much about them at first, but I think the history of how they were, didn't want to migrate, and there was different groups, and that the Harfoots originated from them, but they're forced to move. And I wouldn't know this if I didn't watch all these videos, because I totally forgot. But apparently Smeagol, who became Gon, was originally a store. So they eventually become river folks. So I guess because they hadn't had any water, so now they go to the water. And also I heard a theory that the show's going to end with the Harfoots and the stores and everyone's setting up the Shire. And we'll settle this land, and we will call it the Shire. But anyway, we'll see. It don't. Yeah, the subtitle. But we'll see. We'll see. That would be totally fucking up the timeline. But that's the show's proven they will do that. So we'll see. I wouldn't mind too much, actually, if they did that. Wouldn't bother me. But yeah, so yeah, the storyline was fine. It's a drag a bit. I wasn't all that interested in the Dark Wizard. He did seem kind of a Saruman light. It's like, oh, we need to have a Saruman character. But yeah, other than that, it's just fine.
Darrin?
Yeah, I actually really needed to have like a quick clip of Ryan George just going, he said the thing that's kind of like the thing that the other guy said. So yeah, and like I said, while the Balrog inclusion kind of bothers me from a really we're messing up with the timeline thing, or it just seems to be contradictory and you're throwing it in just because of the movies. Look, the fact that Gandalf's supposed to be 1,000 years after this or 5,000 years or whatever, the next age, and they're including him now doesn't really bother me because, hey, it's Lord of the Rings, got to have Gandalf in there. Yay. I completely agree with you, Alyssa, that they got to have the weird thing about having him here is like, okay, so how is he not involved in these other things that happen because he wasn't supposed to be, unless we're just going to change all of that. And you didn't see in the big battle background, Gandalf as a little person, riding along with the elves and the dwarves. Maybe that's just, in the extended director's cut of Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. I did like seeing Tom Bombadil, mainly just because we've never seen Tom Bombadil really in any other incarnation, and so it was nice to see him sort of pop up here. I know he's a big fan favorite. He was always really confusing to read and trying to figure out what tune he was using with all of these rhymes. So it was nice to hear one. They came up with something. Well, it sounded all very Tom Bombadil-y. And yes, we're obviously setting up Gandalf's connection with the hobbits for later on, again, so we can have that big movie reference there. All of that aside, if this storyline wasn't in the show at all, it would make absolutely no difference with anything else. It's completely aside. It's completely like, let's have Gandalf in here. It feels like just a total play to have that connection. And I don't really see, because again, he's not involved in some of these other things, what mystical thing they're going to have come up. Sorry, he wasn't there because he was dealing with the Dark Wizard, and that's why he wasn't with Saruman. Which, I don't know, is that a Mirkwood reference to the necromancer of Mirkwood? Or wasn't that also a Sauron manifestation?
That was a Sauron thing.
Yeah.
But you reminded me, sorry, Darrin, but you reminded me of what I was going to say. Is that what did you just what did you just say, Darrin?
This whole thing was pointless and didn't contribute to anything.
No, after that. Damn it, I forgot again.
The necromancer is Sauron. Okay, thank you, Brandon. I thought that was another one of Sauron's manifestations. But yeah, I mean, it's a great play for the film, but because there are so many things going on, I would have loved if they cut this whole storyline out and use that to beef up everything else. I think everything else could have used benefit. Numenor, yes, is boring. There is obviously an important reason why we're there. And maybe if they had more time, they could tell that story better. I don't know. I can't wait to get to that little part of the discussion. But yeah, I mean, again, and I like the little lore. I like the connections. I like all of that stuff. I get what they're doing. Yay, nice job. It just really, it doesn't mean anything. And it doesn't contribute to any of the larger story from what I can see. So I wish they would have just focused more on the rings of power as opposed to the origins of Gandalf.
All right, so I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say, as far as Gandalf needs to be somewhere else, so he's not at the Battle of the Prologue, I think the show could just change it so he's there.
Well, yeah, they'll just put his little body in the background.
Yeah, show's changing a lot of things.
Yeah.
So if they redo the prologue scene and Gandalf is there, then it's basically, you're saying this is an alternate universe. That this isn't the same. Like, he can't.
I mean, they're already changing things, though.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not changing things from the movies. They're changing things from the lore. So I don't know. I think they're trying to be consistent with the movie.
I don't I never saw it as. I know they're definitely copying the style of the movies,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't put it past them to change things. And they could always just say, like, no, he was just in the background here where you didn't see him.
Yeah, I mean, they could do that. They could say he was in the background there, but he
And
He
then
can't.
was
obviously,
advising at that point. He wasn't
yeah,
still leading the armies yet. It was a
Yeah.
young,
and they
old
they
Gandalf.
obviously are going to have to film it again because they have to use different actors and different
Yeah.
footage.
Yeah. And
Um,
I mean, they're squeezing in, I think it's like 100 years or something that they're squeezing down into this
1,000
small
years.
period of time, so like 1,000 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
1,000 years.
you know, you have Isildur, so you know it's going to have to happen in this lifetime here. And I think in the
Yeah.
books, he still hasn't even been born yet. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I have to disagree because I know that Brandon said the same thing when I did my live chat a month ago, that he felt that they should just nix the Gandalf storyline, which I completely disagree. I think that they should nix or condense the Numenor storyline, even though I know that the Numenor storyline is supposed to be going somewhere. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a couple minutes. We got one more storyline actually before we get to that. But
Now,
to me, like, yes, I know it doesn't like directly tie into the Rings of Power, but this is the Lord of the Rings show. It ties into the lore. I've always loved the Hobbits. I love seeing the origins of the Hobbits. I love seeing. I think that this whole storyline feels the most Tolkien to me. I guess it's a little thing where it's about your friends and the friendship and my favorite book was always The Hobbit, and that was it really focused more in on like I don't know, the friendship between Gandalf and the hobbits, and I always loved that. So I would never ever cut this storyline out. I in fact think it needs more meat on the bone. Like I think it needs more to it than what what they gave it in this season.
and the other thing is, I'm willing to go with it because I'm trusting that it will connect up to the greater storyline, that they're just
Yeah, I would assume
fleshing
that
these
they have to,
characters
yeah.
out. Yeah, and I don't think it's totally boring and useless like some other storylines are. So I'm willing to go with it and to see how they connect. And plus, the main thing I was going to say, well, if you didn't have the storyline, but then Gandalf wouldn't be in the show.
I know you got to have the Gandalf, which is why I say it's like, I'm fine with it. I'm just saying that at least so far, it doesn't really have any other contribution to the larger story, but that's what the Dark Wizard's for, I guess.
Speaking of the Dark Wizard, I did want to like talk about the Dark Wizard. It's just supposed to be Saruman because I feel like it's a little too much like their relationship is a little too much like Saruman in the films, and I'm really kind of annoyed that they're referring to this backstory that we don't know. So I'm a little bit confused actually. Did Gandalf used to be this great wizard and then he got sent off and lost his memory and now he's starting all over again? Because that's how kind of the Dark Wizard is treating him. Like he used to have these powers. And I'm confused about the relationship, but the way he says old friend, it just kind of reminds me of the whole Saruman thing. So whether or not this is Saruman, this seems like they're doing Saruman again. And because it is such a carbon copy of what they do in the films, I want this to not be Saruman, because if he did the same thing twice, like if it turns out like he falls for the same trick, you know, a couple thousand years later, and it's Saruman all over again, and it's the same thing all over again, that would be annoying. So I'm kind of hoping this isn't Saruman, but I don't know. Mark, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do, because I watched some YouTube videos, and Brandon also points out in the chat, it's either Saruman or one of the blue wizards. So someone was describing the blue wizards, and there were supposed to be two of them, and they go off into the east to never be seen again. And one of them is said to turn evil, and like it uses all of the evil men for his purposes. So this sounds exactly like this guy. So I think that's who it's supposed to be. Now, of course, the timeline's completely off, as none of this supposed to happen to the Third Age. So I can't tell you about how they know each other, because it seems like the show's just totally making that up. So I don't know where they're going with that aspect of it. But Yeah, so it is too much like Saruman. I totally agree. And they're just saying, oh, the same thing has happened, again later on. But Saruman was like a good wizard right up until Lord of the Rings started. So yeah, if this was Saruman, then he would have to turn good again and then turn evil again. So I think they're doing the blue wizard thing.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I've heard about the Blue Wizards too, and that makes sense that he would be one of the Blue Wizards. Um, but I would be really annoyed if they said it was Saruman. So I prefer it to, and that makes a lot more sense what you just described.
Yeah, and I think the blue wizards do come before the Ishtar do come down, and I think it probably was around in the Second Age, wasn't it? If I am
Oh,
remembering correctly.
I don't remember. I thought they all came in the Third Age, but I could be wrong. Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I just knew the blue wizards came in much earlier before the Ishtar and the rest of the wizards.
No,
Brandon.
Sorry, Brandon. I think I am right. Saying I fear not, but I think I'm right. Anyway.
I think you are too. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Actually, to be honest, my real upset is that, I know everybody loves the whole Gandalf thing and we're glad we got to have this. I think it's a missed opportunity to really shine up Radagast the Brown. I think I've mentioned this before. I don't think Radagast gets enough respect as a wizard, and you could have really done something interesting with the character. But I understand Gandalf is the one that everybody looks forward to. So,
no one wants to see bird shit on someone's head all for the entire show.
But that feels more like what the stranger was, don't you think? I mean, really?
Maybe I think bird shit on someone's head would fit more in the Numenor storyline. Anyways,
all right, let's move on. If you guys speaking of the Numenor storyline, we're not quite getting there yet, but we're going to touch on it. There's one more storyline, if you want to call it that, because it's virtually non-existent, and that is the whole thing with Ilsindor and the woman that he meets, and then we have Theo and Arendir. Is that the
yes, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, they're all tied. So here's my theory. here's what I think they should have done. So the actors who played Bronwyn left the show. I think, and I don't mean any disrespect to this actor, because what I'm proposing would mean he wouldn't have a job. but I don't think Theo should have been in the show. He didn't. What's his point? What's the purpose of this character? He had a purpose in season 1. With his mother gone, he had no purpose in season 2, except he gets captured by the Ents, but that could have been anybody. They didn't need him to be that. They don't. This whole thing with him being mad at Arendir and being friends with Ilsindor, 100% pointless. Like, I'm sorry to the actor, but I think that once the mom was gone, the son should have been gone too. Maybe have him do a little cameo at the beginning of the season, like, okay, I'm going off to this other place now. It's just like completely pointless character. Arendir was a big nothing burger in this season, and I'm not saying he should be written off the show, but he should have been folded into other storylines. At the end of the season, he does meet up with the other elves. It seems like moving forward, he will probably be involved more in that elven storyline. He's there in Rivendell with them. I think that should happen at the beginning of this season, where if you want this character to be on the show, you established him in the first season, give him something to do in the second season. And would have made more sense for him to be involved in the Elven storyline. He did absolutely nothing in this in the second season. Another completely pointless character. Now, Ilsindor, we know, of course, is a very important character moving forward. But again, what is he doing? And I've heard a lot of people online talking about they don't care about this romance that he had with this woman, and I would agree to that only because they didn't really flesh it out. Like, this character I don't care about. I'm kind of feeling like maybe this is going to end up being Ilsador's wife. We know that he does produce heirs because Aragorn is one of them way in the future. He's got to marry somebody. But as far as I understand, like his wife is not really talked about much in the lore. So maybe that's where they're going. This is going to be Ilsanor's wife. Fine. So maybe that makes her an important character too. But it was just like a big nothing burger. Like it was that they didn't. If these are going to be important characters that you want to set up moving forward, then spend some time with them, do something with them that's interesting. And if you take Theo out and put Arendir into the storyline, maybe you can focus more on them more. And honestly, it drove me crazy that at the end of the season he goes back to Numenor, and then his dad, he was on Middle Earth, right? Was it? Did I misread that? His dad was riding around in Middle Earth because that's where.
No, I think he was still in Numenor. He said he was going to go to Middle Earth, but I
Okay.
don't think he left.
Because he was in the woods. They have woods like that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, then that's fine. I thought that they had swapped places and they're not going to see each other. That would be absolutely maddening to me. But don't take Ilsador back to Numenor. We'll get to Numenor in a minute. But like, I don't know. This I would rather than do more. We know kind of vaguely where they're going with the storyline. Him and his dad are going to set up colonies, and they're going to start what becomes Gondor and all the Minas Tirith or whatever. Like they're the start of all that. We see the sword, in the end of the season. Oh, look at that, it's the sword, and so we know where this is headed. But it seems like get on with it, like just. What was that from the Holy Grail? Was like, get on with it.
Yes.
just like, so the fact that he's going back to Numenor, it's like, Jesus Christ. Like, so, and we'll get more into Numenor in just a minute, but like, Darrin, your thoughts on this? I guess you could call it a storyline with Ilsador, Theo, Arendir, all that stuff.
Look, we needed to see the Ents somehow. And this was the storyline that had to flesh out to give us a reason to see Ents. I mean, that was kind of a cool little part. I did like that. But yeah, there is a lot of, just treading water in this whole scene. And this is the problem with the whole 2 years. And look, did I go back and watch any of season 1 to do a visual comparative of myself? No, because I didn't care that much. But Arendir looked like so much older and more haggard than I remembered seeing him in season 1. And again, he may look exactly the same, but I was just like, are we going to have like a bunch of old elves because there's so much time in between every season? They're actually going to be going gray in between shots. So that kind of stood out to me. But outside of that, yeah, this really didn't go anywhere. I don't think he was really used that well outside of pining for the dead mom that he kind of liked. Yeah, I agree, Theo didn't really contribute anywhere outside of getting in trouble so they could find the Ents and then solve the problem and come back. The relationship with the girl was pointless and did nothing. It was, hey, I saw a pretty girl and got a boner. That's my motivation for this season. Oh, she's got a husband? Well, I mean, do you really love him? Because I got a boner. And that's honestly how the depth of what that relationship felt like. So I like Isildur. I think the magical connection he has with his horse is really the storyline that we should have focused on a little bit more. That's a tough horse, man. That horse would go a lot of places all by itself. Very scary. Places I never would thought that a horse would go to. But if it's looking for Isildur, man, I guess they got that bond. So yeah, this didn't feel like it went anywhere or accomplished anything really overall outside of eventually getting Arendir over to the elves. And that was a nice meetup and kind of cool, like, yay, you're doing something now. But yeah, I got nothing else to add.
So what I'm about to quote is not Ryan George. It's Elrond from the first Fellowship of the Ring movie, because this always goes through my head the way he says Isildur when he's yelling in Mountain Dew for the ring. Anyway, that's what I always think of. But so yeah, the storyline was kind of unnecessary. I agree with you wholeheartedly about Theo. When they were having scenes with him, I'm like, oh, so they're keeping him in the show. Like, there was one point when he went to Arendelle, was like, I don't want anything to do with you. You're not my father. I'm like, oh, good. So he's going to leave the show now. But then we kept saying, I'm like, God damn it, he's still here. We'll see what they do with them. The Ents were there, and it was like, oh, they're from the movies, and we see the Ent wives, which is, oh, isn't that cool, because we didn't see them before. But otherwise, I was like, yeah, whatever. I suppose it's setting up for season 3, because the asshole guy wants to take all the lumber, and they're looking at each other like, oh my god, the Ents are going to attack us if we cut down all the trees. So maybe it will lead to something, but I kind of just want that asshole guy to die right away. Exactly, Darrin. But as far as that woman, I believe Brandon said her name was Astrid. I would have remembered that. I liked her a little bit at first. Like, I wasn't totally opposed to her. I think it was interesting that she was hiding the fact that she was one that had the mark of Adar and was one of the wild men, and that sort of moment where the mod monster, whatever, was eating them, that she actually stayed behind and saved them, was an interesting moment. So I liked her up until we got the love triangle. Once it was like, oh, that's your husband, oh, or betrothed or whatever, and oh no, there's a love triangle. We don't need a fucking love triangle. But I'm kind of curious. I hope they do something with her in the future, unlike Theo, who just needs to die or go away or something. But yeah, I was still, even though Elendil is still in Numenor, I was still upset that a fucking Isildur was leaving. I'm like, because when Elendil is like, oh, then we will go to Middle Earth. I'm like, yes, finally, get rid of this goddamn Numenor storyline. Let's go to Middle Earth. But then he's still in Numenor, and then we see Isildur leaving. I'm like, no, where are you going? Why are you going back to Numenor?
No, I 100% the same way. Just get on with it already. Jesus Christ. Maybe that's a good segue to talk about Numenor now. Yeah, so we're at the end. This is my least favorite storyline. And I know Marc, it was yours as well. So the way I feel about the storyline, it reminds me of I did a written review on my Facebook page earlier this year for a show called Three Body Problem, which was based off of a book, and I hadn't read the book. I watched the show at the recommendation of people who came into my live chat several months ago. And in my review, I talked about how this show, it doesn't actually have characters. It more has like walking, talking plot devices that have no other purpose other than to push the story forward. They're all one note or two note characters that I just do not care about. And this is exactly how I feel about the new.
That sounds like a Dan and Dave show to me.
Yes, it is a Dan and Dave show. Yes. And even when I was in the live chat, and I don't remember who it was who was recommending it. I forget. There was people in there who were talking about, or at least they were recommending it because of the books, that they liked the books. They hadn't seen the show yet. And I was like, but Dan and Dave were doing it. And so yeah, and it's just like, but anyways, tying it back to this show, that's exactly how I felt about Numenor. Every single character is a one note or two-note character. You have the evil dictator, and then his evil son. I believe it was Jesse Gender described him as cartoonishly dickish, a cartoonish dick, which made me think of a cartoon dick and made me laugh. But absolutely spot on. Like all he is just this really cartoonishly evil asshole guy. That's all he is. And then the father, what is it, Illendor? What's the father's name? Illendor's father's name? He's just
Elendil.
Elendor.
Elendil. Yeah.
Elendil. Elendil. Yeah. He is just like, I'm the hero, like I'm the action here. I am the like noble person here. And then the queen was driving me crazy because she's just like, no matter what they do to you, no, this is the way things are meant to be. And like, no, fuck you, fight back. Like, what is, I don't, because I just don't understand why she's behaving that way. Because she looked at the little orb thing, and that like made her like, no, this is the way we are. Like that just drove me up the wall. And like when she does the thing with the sea, she goes in the sea and comes out like, I don't care. I don't care. Like I just don't care. Can we skip over all of this and get to the part where Isildur and his father like go to Middle Earth? So can we please? Like I just do not care about a single one of these characters that are just these one-note characters with no personality, no depth, no development. And I will say, to its credit, it wasn't as bad as it was in season 1 because they had it less often. Still had it too much, but season 1, because Galadriel was in Numenor for a while, that they spent a lot of time in Numenor, and here they had, I think there was like at one point 2 straight episodes where they didn't do Numenor at all, and I was like, cool. So that's the one positive thing that I can say, is that they didn't have it as much as they had it in season 1, but they still had it way too much. Like this is just, they need to get to the point with this storyline. And then with the, I'm forgetting his name. Remind me, Mark, the evil guy, the king guy.
Oh, Pharazôn.
I think a lot of people seem to think that he's being set up to be one of the ring wraiths, even though that's not the case in the lore. That does seem kind of where they're headed. He looks into the orb thing. He's going to see the eye of Sauron, or whatever. He's going to, he's probably going to get one of the rings. Fine. But I don't know. I always had pictured that the ring bearers were, at one point good men. I don't know if that's ever like been, really said, but I guess that was just how the impression that I got, that they were good men who like got corrupted by the rings, whereas this guy is evil already. So I don't know if I kind of want him to be a ring wraith or not.
So the one thing I will say, because I watched the prologue from the first movie again, and in the movie anyway, I don't know about the books, but in the movie, they said that the 9 men who were corrupted, who lust for power, or something like that, who want nothing but power. So it said they were corrupted, but it didn't necessarily say that they were good to begin with. It said that they lust for power.
I don't think it ever actually said that. I just think that's probably the impression I got, maybe because I watched a lot of Star Wars when I was a kid, and the whole Darth Vader thing. So that may not at all be what they had intended, but I don't know. Like this guy, if that's where we're headed with this guy, then let's just get to it. Like I don't know. This storyline drives me up the wall. It just drives me crazy every time they show it. I want them to go away from it. I fucking hate it. So that's where I'm at. Darrin, how did you feel about this storyline?
Not too differently, really. It's just, I didn't, again, it was one of the ones where I just didn't care. I also thought that the switch of like, the queen goes back and then pretty much everybody turns on her automatically. There's nobody really on her side. I know they have the kind of standoff and some of her people get killed and such, but it seems like a coup was really super easy, barely an inconvenience. I didn't really plan that when I was saying that. but yeah, it's just it felt very simple, and I think it does cartoonish. Farazan was very much like, oh, we shouldn't do it because there's a way to do it. Okay, excellent, let's go all the way, with a little whiny son. And it felt, all I was waiting was like, okay, so this is like the king of the Nazgul, right? This is the guy from Numenor. I'm trying to remember my history while I was watching. And I knew Numenor was important at one point, but it falls, and that can't come soon enough. Because I don't. There's nothing that is holding me to this story at all.
And Mark, before you go, I wanted to say that I 100% agree with you that I want that fucker to die. that little annoying child, cartoonishly dickish son guy. Like, I can't wait. I hope he I mean, I'm just gonna find his death more satisfying than Joffrey's. Quite honestly, like I want them because Joffrey was a good character and with a good actor. This is just such a bad character that I just want to see him like stabbed over and over again. Just like I want it to be satisfying. But anyway, Mark, you go on.
Unfortunately, I don't think that he will die. I think that he will turn into a ring wraith too, because I think, knowing this show, I think there's a 0% chance that the 9 people who turn into ring wraiths are not characters we already know. I think they're most definitely going to be characters we know. So it's probably going to be mostly the assholes, I think. It's probably that random old guy who was supporting Farazan. And that's what I think. But anyway, what I thought of Numenor, it was, sucked. Totally boring. I think the fact that it was moving so fast that things were just happening was just like plot devices happening with no characters. It was a mixed response to that, because on the one hand, obviously it sucked badly, it's bullshit, but on the other hand, oh good, they're moving through the storyline very fast so we can get it over with. That's why I was so upset at the end when they were dragging it out more. It's like, no, don't drag it out. You were going so fast. Just end it. Get it over with. Get them to Middle Earth. Let's move on with them getting corrupted by the rings. I think next season probably will be about Sauron, because now he has the 9. I think it's about him going to the Numenorians and corrupting them, which might actually be somewhat interesting. But I think they just need to move past the whole thing with the queen, that they kept her there. Like, I agree, I don't care about her. Like, when that big sea serpent saved her life, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have killed her. Like, because I really don't care about this character, and they don't really do anything with her. And I was just like, ugh. Then we get more scenes with Elendil like confessing his undying love for her or whatever. I'm like, let's move on with this. And then she gave him Narsil, and I thought, or Narsil, and I did think that was a big, hey, that's from the movie. That big, like, sort of, that's the sword, And I'm just like, let's move on with this. But yeah, other than that, it's, and we had Isildur's friend who died. I was so sad when he died. What's his face that I didn't give a shit about. Like, everything just happened. Like, the way Farazan became leader, like, so fast, and now he's the leader now.
What that reminds me of, Mark, that guy dying. And again, I'm sorry.
I think I know what you're. No, I think I know what you're going to say.
Reading so much, but no, not the guy with the light beam in the head.
I wonder if Ryan George does season 2 for Pitch Meeting, if he'll say that. Oh no, not that guy with curly hair.
Yeah. One thing I do agree with you on, Mark. I mean, I agree with you on everything, but one thing that I wanted to talk about is what you said about if they're going to probably have Sauron corrupting them in the next season. Sauron's presence could make that storyline more interesting, because especially if they have the same actor, he was really good, so they could maybe like spice that up a little bit, make it a little more interesting. But again, it kind of feels like it's just like, I mean, with Celebrimbor, like he really had to manipulate it. Celebrimbor was a good person that or good elf that he manipulated him. These guys are already evil, so it just feels like, here, be evil. Yes, we're evil. I mean, it's just like, then he doesn't really have to do much. They're already evil, so it's just like, I don't know. I think they could make it interesting though, but
yeah, he wouldn't be so much turning them evil as much as manipulating them to do what he wants.
Yeah,
and I think they were hinting at that at the end of the season when Pharazôn looked in the Palantir and saw and brought up Sauron. I think they were hinting that he actually was like communicating with Sauron.
Yeah.
The Palantir are only good for corruption. That's what we established. There is no other existence for them.
Yeah. Well, no, because then the Queen of Numenor can look into them and see this. See, this is all how it's meant to be. We have to stop fighting. Like, what?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those. It's the same thing. It's like the Saruman Dark Wizard kind of bit. It's like, oh, you have a Palantir, so obviously you're connecting with Sauron, who is corrupting you, and you're looking into it. And when he looks and does his thing, that's all that I could think of. So it's just, I wish they do it for other things.
The son is not looking into that. He's just a dick.
Yeah. Well, that's all he sees. It's just giant cartoon dick. And he's, oh, it's me. No.
Yeah, did I say to make the joke? I think I made a joke in a different video about someone else, but I think he also applies to him, is that he reminds me of the 80s villain with the sweater tied around.
Oh, yeah. No, you were talking about, this was a different video that you were you were talking about the dude from House of Dragon. You were talking about Allison's brother.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but this guy is like even more of a dick.
More. No, that guy actually wasn't anywhere near as bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy was just, kind of a little bit of a prick. Like kind of a snobby, wealthy prick guy. This guy is just a dick. Like, anyways, this is actually a nice segue because I wanted to do, before we wrap this up, we're going to end this with our ratings, but I did want to do a thing that I hear a lot of people online and on other YouTube videos and other things that I've seen say that you should not do. As fantasy fans, we've got to love them all, and like we should never compare Game of Thrones to Lord of the Rings. Like it's all fantasy and it's all support each other. Bullshit. They keep putting them out in the same year, and then in 2022 season ones were running concurrently. Like they were both on at the same time. This year, at least, there's a few months apart from the end of House of the Dragon and the start of this, but they're in the same year. So I cannot help but compare the two. So I'm curious of you guys' thoughts. Just you can either compare the season twos or just the shows in general. And I kind of have an idea of yours, Mark, because I think you touched on it in your video. So, but we'll start with you, Mark. What are your?
Yeah, so I think I did mention this in my video that I did prefer House of the Dragon season 2 over this. If you did do the show overall, House of the Dragon easily, but comparing the two season 2s, I think it just edges it out because the fact that it ended 2 episodes in and didn't have a finale hurt it a lot. Otherwise, I would say it's easily better than season 2. But because of that, it's a close call. But I still give the slight edge to House of the Dragon, even though it, Daemon was sticking around having visions all fucking season, and Corlys was standing by the boat all season long. I still say nothing in that show was anywhere near as bad as Numenor. And overall, I just think I was more excited for it. I was more into it. I was like, part of the reason why I was so upset that the season ended without having an ending, it didn't have an ending, was because I was so invested in it and I was so interested in it. So yeah, I just wouldn't feel right saying I thought this was better than House.
Maybe the Rings of the Power could have lent one of their endings to. Dragon didn't have any, so sort of 1%.
Yeah, sharing is caring.
Scary. Your thoughts, Darrin?
Obviously, the real winner is Wheel of Time season 2. No.
I actually like Wheel of Time season 2, but yeah.
No. It was fine. No, if we were looking between the two, I don't know. I mean, I think House of the Dragon is a better crafted show. I think there's more stuff that I can find that I care within it. I appreciate the production value and the scope that they are aiming for, I think, in Rings of Power a little bit more, however. I think in some ways, Rings of Power is trying to be the show that we are expecting House of the Dragon to be, in the way of it's produced and it's I don't know. I think there's just more going on in a larger kind of scale that they're spending time doing versus with House of the Dragon. I think they tried to save that for just a couple of small bits, and we would see the beginnings of battles or the ends of battles, but very, very rarely the actual battles. And I think that they tried to do some bigger stuff in with this. So, I don't know. That's. I might actually put this just slightly above House of the Dragon, just in the sense of its aim for its scope. And again, there was a lot of stuff that I really liked in House of Dragon, but I know it also frustrated me with its pacing so much. And I don't think that this suffered from that exact same thing. It was different. I think they tried to tackle too much and they kind of lost their stepping in that. But I appreciate what they were aiming for. So I would probably put this just maybe a little bit above.
So I will say that after season 1 of the respective shows, the season 1s, it was not even close. Like, it was laughable to even talk about the Rings of Power in the same breath of House of the Dragon. Like, but I will say in the seasons 2s, the playing field is a little bit more even. Even when I'm looking at the entire shows, I think Lord of the Rings is caught up, or maybe it's going. I think in one is going up, another is going down a little bit, perhaps. So that now they're kind of even playing fields, and in fact they gave each of the season 2s the same rating. That's a spoiler for my rating if you remember what my rating for House of the Dragon was. So but I do agree, Mark, that they didn't do anything in House of Dragon that was anywhere near as bad as Numenor. But also I didn't feel the same level of frustration with the finale, and I felt a lot of frustration with the finale of House of the Dragon. So I kind of see the season 2s. I mean, I gave them the same rating. They're kind of evened out. But if I'm looking at the series overall, you mentioned what you get more excited about. I am still like psyched for season 3 of House of the Dragon. I'm getting pumped for it. I know it probably is 2 years away, but can't wait to go back and revisit the book material yet again once House of the Dragon comes out. And the Lord of the Rings is like, yeah, I'm more excited about it than I was for season 2. After season 1, I was like, yeah, I guess I'll watch a season 2 since they're going to put all that time and effort into it. So I'm a little more excited about a season 3 than I was for a season 2, but it's not on the same level as my excitement for House of Dragon season 3. So I'm still more excited for House of Dragon. I'm still more invested in it. But quality-wise, I think Lord of the Rings has caught up with it a little bit, whereas season 1, it was like a big disparity.
So one last thing I wanted to mention about House of the Dragon, because I was watching this YouTube video that was complaining about the change they made to Blood and Cheese and the change they made with Alicent, and how it destroys her character that she went to Rhaenyra at the end, and also the fact that Daemon saw the vision of the White Walkers that ruined the show. And I'm just like, I don't actually give a shit about any of that. Like the Game of Thrones vision did annoy me a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal. The Allison thing, I'm actually excited for. I want to see where they're going with it. I don't mind that they're changing the books, but when it comes to the ending and how they ended it too early, he's like, "Oh yeah, that's not the show's fault. The HBO made them end it 2 episodes early, so that's fine. I hold it nothing against it." I was like, "But no, that's the only problem I have with it. All that other shit you mentioned, I am perfectly fine with. It's the fact that." Even if you use the excuse HBO and need them into the season 2 episodes early, you still didn't need to have Damon fucking around with visions the entire season. That could have been condensed into 1 episode. So
which is not true compared to according to Ryan Condal.
Yeah,
that was always the plan according to the show.
Exactly. Everyone
is not because of HBO.
Everyone is so easy to dismiss. Oh, Ryan Condal's just saying that. Like, why? Why would he just? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think. Say that. Yeah,
I don't think he's just saying that. So I don't give them a pass for that.
Why would he say like the thing that everyone's complaining about? He would say, "Oh, that was always my plan. I own that." Why would he do that? That's dumb.
Yeah, well,
yeah, it was true.
Exactly. Yeah. But even if that was, even if you wouldn't blame them for that, the pacing still sucked. So I was like, that's the only issue I had with it was the pacing. All that other shit, it's different from the books. Who cares? I want to see where they go with it. So yeah, the only issue I had was the pacing.
Anything else to add, Darrin, on this contrasting? I just wanted to do that because I was with you guys for the whole entire season of House Dragon, so let's bring it back full circle and tie it all together.
Sure. No. As I said, I think you're getting a quality versus aiming for scope and stuff like that. So I agree. They're definitely closer in that, but yeah, that's the only thing is I appreciate what they were trying for at least with this, even if they didn't always hit it.
Okay, so I think we can head into the final segment of our discussion, where each of us will give a rating out of 10 for season 2 of Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power. Marc, I'll start with you, even though I already know your rating because you did give it in your review. But go ahead and tell us again what your rating was and why.
Yeah, so my rating was also the same as the House of the Dragon, which is an 8 out of 10. I did retroactively downgrade season 1 to a 7 because I saw that I gave it an 8. I'm like, that's not an 8. I think I was just too excited about the ending reveal of Sauron. But the season as a whole is definitely a point down from this one. And I was like, but this one didn't quite get to a 9 for me. The Numenor shit and the stranger stuff, or the stranger, don't be a stranger. The Gandalf stuff was fine, but kind of boring. And the Isildur stuff was a complete waste of time. Why are they keeping Theo in the show? So it didn't quite get there to a 9. As great as the Sauron stuff was, as much as I did really love Galadriel, I still think that didn't quite get there to a 9 for me. But it definitely deserves an 8. And plus, the ending battle was good, but it's not Game of Thrones good, so it doesn't deserve that 9.
What about you, Darrin?
Yeah, I am smack right in agreement. 8 would be exactly where I would put this. I think there's a lot of ambition. There's a lot of stuff that they're trying to do, and I appreciate all that they're attempting to weave. I think there are a few misses in the storylines. I think there's some stuff that maybe they could have had a better use of time and budget focusing on just a few of the storylines or less of all of those, and maybe be a little bit more efficient with just getting through some of the others. So not too much higher than that. I think 8's a good solid rating for a show that was good but not great.
We are 3 for 3. We're all in agreement because I also give it an 8. And I did not have to retroactively reduce my rating for season 1 because I had always given it a 7. And I went back and double checked because I have it written down in my top 10 of that year or top 20, whatever. So I did give it a 7, season 1, and this is definitely a full point better. I think in the beginning of the season, especially, I think they didn't have the Numenor at the beginning of the season. I think the first couple episodes they didn't have Numenor, and I think in the beginning of the season I was feeling 9 potential. Like this could be a 9. This could be like way better than House of Dragon season 2. Kind of falters a little bit. Kind of gets stuck in pointless storylines and kind of get taken away from the storylines I care about a little bit. And so it starts off like in 9 territory, comes down a little bit to an 8, but still that's 1 full point higher than the season 1. Season 1 was the opposite. I was like 5 to 6 for the whole season. Like I'm like, this is going to be between a 5 and a 6. And then the finale I really loved, so I bumped it all the way up to a 7. So this was the opposite. It started off at a 9 and came down a little bit, but still finishes a point higher. So yeah. We can hope for maybe a 9 in season 3. Maybe they can. I think they really just need to cut out some of the fat. They need to condense some of these storylines. I think adding Sauron to the Numenor storyline might help that storyline. I think folding Arendir in with the elves, I still say get rid of Theo. Just kind of combining some things, condensing some things might help it in season 3. Maybe they have a shot for a 9 from me in season 3. But yeah, we're right all in agreement. We're at an 8.
Excellent. I've got to jump out. I've got a thing that I have to run and do, and we went a little later than I was hoping for. So I'm going to say thank you so much for having me on this big discussion. I'm glad we were able to get through all of it. And I'm going to say goodnight.
All right. Do you want to say real quick where they can find you, or
you can find me at D's Reviews, but mostly probably over on Marc's channel talking about Star Trek stuff. So those are always awesome. Though check my socials at Darrin Jakes on the Twitters and things. Maybe doing a episode 3 discussion of The Penguin, which is a show that I've been really enjoying, and that's been over at Smirking Gun Reviews with Rob. So you can check that out. Otherwise, probably with Marc or over here with Alyssa talking about more of this fun stuff. All right. Thanks.
Well, see you later, Darrin. We're closing out anyways. Marc, you want to go ahead and tell the good people where they can find you? I'm sure anyone watching this already knows, but
yeah. But if you're finding me for the first time, my name is Marc. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity. Currently covering every episode of Star Trek in Deep Space Nine and Next Generation. Starting Deep Space Nine season 2 soon and Next Generation season 7 soon. I'm also putting all my Star Trek reviews up on podcast on wherever you find your podcast, Amazon, Spotify, whatnot. But I'm still in the process. I'm up to the animated series of uploading those, but eventually I'm going to catch up. I'll see on Lord of the Cats. But anyway, and I'll be starting Lower Decks when that starts, and I'll be doing continuing my top 25 favorite episodes of Star Trek live stream. Hopefully we'll be doing number 6 fairly soon. So yeah, check me out for that.
All right. My name, of course, is not Galandri. It is Alyssa. You can find me right here on Alyssa Jeans Reviews. I am not producing as much content as I had in the past. I will still occasionally pop over on Marc's channel and do some talks over there about Star Trek. Hopefully join him for his next top 25 video. But doing a little bit of Star Trek stuff. I'm not going to cover every episode of Lower Decks, but I will probably do a mid-season and into-season review for Lower Decks. You can go back and retroactively look at what I thought about Prodigy and Discovery this year, and then I have all sorts of Star Trek videos in the past that I would love for you to watch if you have not already. So please check me out. Thank you all for joining us here for this discussion. It was great. This was basically in lieu of me having to record a video for Lord of the Rings. I didn't feel like doing it. I thought it'd be more fun to talk with Marc and Darrin. So I thank you, Marc, and Darrin, who just left us, for joining me and having this fun discussion. And we will see you all next time. Goodbye.